So what I did this rotation on co-op. So this rotation or past rotation on co-op, I was at Thermo Fisher Pharmaceuticals for my second rotation, and I was in a facilities engineering role. This was a big departure from pretty much every other role I've done, as it really was focused more on just upgrades to the site itself. There wasn't as much involved from a production aspect or chemical engineering aspect, really. So this was a big transition for me, and something I actually wasn't initially super on board with. That changed really quickly. I actually loved what I did this semester, but it was definitely a little bit different compared to what I expected to be doing going into the semester. So facilities role at our site was essentially working on upgrades around the site, whether that be things to our HVAC systems, um, changes to the actual production rooms themselves, things like that. We were mainly focusing on site improvements and just new things around the site itself. So I had a couple big projects that I was actually able to work on. The first one was installing a new steam generator to serve our HVAC systems. So for our air purification systems, we would run clean steam through them, and that's how we would generate and control the humidity of different production spaces. And when I got in there, we had an existing steam generator that had a pretty bad time controlling the steam regulation for the humidity levels for the areas it was supposed to, as well as it really had a lot of issues with leaks and things like that. And so I was tasked with working with our contracting team to replace it with a like-for-like replacement that we had on site. This was my first big project that I did this rotation, and really the big theme throughout my entire rotation was project management. I was really working more as a project manager than an engineer per se, as a lot of the work was being done by contractors. So it taught me a lot of lessons about how to essentially lead a team. I was in charge of the work that the contractors were doing. That I would have my supervisor, who was a project manager or a project engineer, would check in just to make sure everything was going well, but really the majority of the work was left up for me to do, and a lot of the freedom was given to me to work with the contractors to make sure that we were on track, the work was being done correctly. And so a couple challenges with that steam generator. It was in a really tough position to get to. It was in like a mezzanine crawl space almost, where I literally would get down on my legs and have to crawl into the space to even look at it, which was one of the big problems with it. So I worked to find a new location for the steam generator to go into, as well as how we could get all of the steam connections, the city water, things like that were actually going to be connected to it, put in. And I had a pretty aggressive timeline with the cold spell that came in October. We had a big concern that we were going to need the steam generator to be up. So I came in September, was essentially made aware of this, and was given 1 month to get it installed. So there were a couple challenges, but it worked. In the end, I managed to get everything done correctly. We were able to reuse some old pipe, so we didn't have to completely fabricate new pipes, as well as run it in an entirely new direction, as well as just working with some great contractors to make sure that we got everything done on time, and we were able to get it installed. I was able to get all the paperwork, the qualifications, things like that done with it as well. And so that was really one of my big projects. The biggest project I got to work on, which was a really, really cool experience, was I was essentially served with my supervisor as a project engineer for a $9 million renovation that we were doing to a production area. We were essentially taking a storage room and from literally square one, turning it into a brand new production space. I had never worked on anything even close to the scale of this. And while I wasn't the lead, I wasn't the one making all the big decisions. I essentially served in the kind of the day-to-day problem solver role of it, while my boss spent a lot of the time on big picture budget things like that. It was a really cool experience because I worked with him a lot, so I got to see kind of how a project engineer and project management looks like from a professional level. For my boss, who's been doing it now for a couple years, and it was also just a really cool experience to get to see kind of more from the engineering side, but even get to see some of the money management and other things that I really didn't think about as an engineering focus, but actually I really enjoyed learning about and seeing how to budget things like that and manage different things. But like I said, I manage a lot of the day-to-day roles. So if issues were to occur where we needed to get into a production space and we needed a barrier in place because we can't have open construction work going on in a production area for pharmaceuticals, I was in charge of making sure we got the barrier up and they had all the tools they needed and were ready to go work inside. One of the big things I worked on was making sure that all the utility connections, so our compressed air, purified water, things like that, all the connections that the space was going to need. I worked with the operations team, the ones who are actually going to be using it, to make sure that we were meeting all their requirements, but we also had an effective timeline and kind of idea to see if we could even meet all the requirements that they had. So that was a really cool aspect, as well as I was actually placed in charge of purchasing a solution kettle, which is essentially a portable mixer for our granulate. And so I got put in charge of just working with production to scope out the requirements, seeing what we had existing, if anything worked there, before eventually coming up with an idea for a current one. So this has been an ongoing project. When I got there, we were just starting to put up reinforcement steel in the floors below it. Now we're torn out the roof to fly in all of our equipment. We're putting up walls in the actual space itself. So it's been just a super crazy, amazing experience, and I'm super glad that I got to participate in and leave my mark on. And it's really taught me just a lot about what goes into managing something on this scale. I mean, there's so many different things. It's really not just about being able to deliver what you want. It's being able to deliver what you want on time, under budget, while dealing with any issues that came up. And so it taught me a lot, and I learned a lot about my own project management, leadership skills, working with contractors, being able to lead a team, lead meetings that are tailored to different levels, whether that be the engineers working on it, the contractors working on it. It was a great experience and a great semester. I'll be going back for my 5th afterwards, and I'm really looking forward to it.